guys. Welcome to the Charm City Church podcast. And I'm here tonight with a very special guest. She is a teacher, a mother, a volleyball coach, a kids ministry director, a model on the side, I think. Trying to think of all the other hats you wear. My personal counselor, and the person that stands by my side, my wife, Bekah Eufemia, is here tonight with us. And so it's going to be a chill night. We're in our new place. This studio is legit. And so thanks, Josh Stone, for allowing us to have this spot and to use it to bring God glory. And so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to go through just some questions about us as a couple. We're going to see how deep we get into things, how real we want to be tonight. Maybe a counseling session that you're witnessing live for free. And so we'll see what we do tonight. But we're going to go through some questions. And just to start it off, the first question for the day is, how did you guys, or us, how did we meet? So do you want to start this? Because I know you're just going to tell your side anyway.
You always tell it wrong.
Okay, do you want to tell it to me?
No, I want you to tell it, and then as you go, I can, correct you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess how we met, the first step was we both went to different colleges at first. We ended up both going to Lancaster Bible College. And so we were there, and we both played sports. I played soccer, she played volleyball. And so while we were there in that first semester, all the teams get there early. We got there early. And, you get there the first week, and I was single, she was single. You kind of are... You're scouting it out, seeing, is my potential wife here, possibly. If you say you're not, you're lying. Everyone's scouting it out, looking around. And so I'm looking around, and I didn't see, there was no one that caught my eye that was okay, this is someone that I feel like I want to pursue. And then first week goes by, and I hadn't seen her yet. And so, just to preface that. So that first week goes by, and then we go to church on Sunday, and all the teams go together. And so there was a church called Calvary that was up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And so we go there, and great message. And me and my roommate went at the time, Rama, who played soccer with us. And so I'm driving, and I'm leaving the church, and then there's a stop sign. And I'm at the stop sign, and this girl walks across in front of our car. Not across our car, in front of our car. And so she walks in front of our car, and I look at my roommate, and I was like, see, if there was a girl like that at our college, that's the kind of girl I'm looking for. I saw her. I was like, that's the kind of girl I'm looking for. She had a rose tattoo on her right ankle. And so I noticed that, picked up on that. And then we go back into our college campus, and we go to the lunch area. And I notice the girl with the rose tattoo that was there. And so I was like, okay, well, now the game's on.
Then what'd you do?
So, well, okay, let me ease into it. So then, I kind of play it cool. I try to follow her on Instagram. Did you follow me back?
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw that you had an LBC in your bio.
So
I was like,
that.
I guess. And we have mutual followers.
Oh, I went to the same school, of course.
Yeah, so I was
appreciate
like, okay.
that. You're so sweet. And so then, followers, follows me back. I kind of lay low. I go to a couple of the volleyball games, and she doesn't really notice me yet. And so then there comes a time where she posts something on her story. And I don't know. Are we just telling this whole story?
I mean, you already are.
Okay,
so,
we're just going into it then. So, she posted something where she was doing this half Ironman.
Yeah.
And
it's a triathlon race. I had been training for a really long time for it. And then it almost got canceled, and I was upset about it.
So it got canceled by this hurricane. I don't remember the hurricane name, but it was one of the most devastating hurricanes
it was a
for
bad
a specific
hurricane
country
on the East Coast.
I don't remember what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And she had posted I was so upset because the hurricane canceled one part of my half Ironman. And me, being a immature young boy, but also crushing on this girl, just sent her this DM with the praying hands. And yeah, I know you can make
It was
fun of me.
sarcastic.
It was sarcastic.
It was a joke.
It was a joke, and let me tell you why. It was
But
one of
I
those
didn't
things. It
know
was like,
that.
but it was like a joke. But it was like, if you don't think it's a joke, that's not a joke. But like, if you do think it's a joke and you're gonna reject me, then it was a joke. It was one of those kind of things.
Okay.
And so then I threw it out there, and me and my roommate both sent her praying hands.
At the same
same
time.
Exact time.
We went back and
And it's
looked
kind
at
of
the
a-
timestamps.
It's kind of a joke.
It was the same time.
And this is when I knew. This is when I knew I had a chance. She texted or DM'd him back, praying hands, and it was a smiley face, but it was one of those smiley faces with like, you can tell like it wasn't like I'm flirting with
teeth.
you. It had
Like,
the
it was the
teeth. It was
teeth.
like one of the like, you're my friend. And then she sent me thank you with a smiley face, but like the blushing smiley face.
And he read really far into that.
I mean, that's clear. I mean, I think it's clear. The evidence is right here.
It worked out that way.
The evidence is clear. And so then I was like, okay, well, maybe I have a little bit a chance with her. And so then we started DMing, and I went hardcore with all the scripture verses, and you need to give it to God, and he's I just went all in. And so then we started DMing, DM for about a day or so, got her number. Then she went to go have her half Ironman, which happened to be in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the time, then she flew back through Baltimore, Washington, Baltimore, which is where I lived at the time. And so then this was Sunday when she was flying back. She didn't have anyone to drive her to Lancaster. And so she was going to have her or not her daughter-in-law. What is it?
My sister-in-law.
Your sister-in-law come pick her up from the Baltimore Washington airport, which would have been about an hour and a half drive for her, 3 hours round trip. And so she texted me, and she was like,
I guilt-tripped him.
Yes.
I guilt-tripped
She was
him.
like, hey, I really, I wouldn't want to inconvenience her and have her come pick me up.
Okay, no, I didn't say that.
Oh, you did.
No, I said it would be an inconvenience.
Oh, okay,
I said
okay.
I never said I didn't
Okay,
want to inconvenience.
okay, there
This
you
is
go.
where he starts getting the story wrong. Because he thinks I fished for it a lot harder than I actually did.
Either way.
You mean I did, but...
Either way.
Okay.
So either way, she lets this random guy pick her up from the airport.
You had LBC in your bio, and we had mutual friends.
Everyone
and
knows that.
he was
safety, right?
He was sending me Bible verses.
To all the college
I'm from High
girls,
Springs,
if
Florida.
any are listening to this, do not do this.
I'm from High Springs,
not do
Florida. We have
this.
one stoplight.
Yeah.
I did not think that there were bad people in the world.
And so pick her up. We end up hitting it off, having a great time. And then kind of the rest is history. We end up getting engaged
11 months later.
11 months later.
Married.
Well, it was technically 13 months after that.
That's true.
And then after that, we got married. How long after that? I guess
9 months.
9 months. And so now we've been
June
married.
25th, 2021. Almost 3 years.
Time flies. Time flies.
Mm-hmm.
But yep, that's the story of how we met. And so that's a little bit about us. Second, do you have anything else you want to add to that?
You actually did a really good job with that.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Second question we have is, can you share the story of how you guys planted C3 as a couple? And so do you want to start with that one, or you want me to start with that one?
I feel like you can start because the whole church planting thing was kind of his childhood vision. I mean, I felt called to be a missionary for a while, but then when we got married, I didn't know quite that you wanted to plant a church. I knew that you wanted to be a pastor, so I think you can start.
Yeah. So how it started was kind of a challenging start, and we'll talk about that more into the next question. But how it started actually was, it was the middle of November, and God had given me this revelation just that he had called me to plant a church in the next couple years. And so that was November of 2022. And at that time, I came and I told Bekah that I felt like God had called me to do this. And at that time, Bekah is such an amazing wife in that she will go with whatever the flow is. Like if I told her that that God was calling me to move to Zimbabwe, she would literally say, okay, let's go. Like she is down to go wherever wherever God calls us. And so I
did think he was crazy, though. I did think you were crazy.
Well, this is the first time hearing this, so.
Well, I thought he was crazy because I was 8 months pregnant.
That's true.
And it was just not something I was thinking about. So when
Yeah.
he said that he wanted to plant a church. I was like, oh, okay. But I mean, I am down for it.
Yeah.
But
And that was something that church planting was never something that I wanted to do. I actually always thought that I would revitalize or take over a church because I'm a very I like to play things safe. And so to me, revitalizing a church or taking over a church was a much safer route. You typically already would have a congregation, you'd
yeah,
already have a building, you would already have finances in place. And so I always thought that that would be the route that God had me. And then, in typical God fashion, he surprised me with, "Hey, I'm calling you to plant a church." And so go talk to her about it. She says, she apparently thought I was crazy. I never knew it. And
but like in a
then,
good way, not
yeah,
in a like a. There's no way you're gonna be able to do this. In a like, I just didn't expect it.
yeah. And so the next step after that, I went and told my boss or the lead pastor at the church that I was currently attending. And so I went and talked with him, and talked to him about this desire that God had put in my heart. And so from there, uh, preparations started to be made to plant this church. And I'm trying to think of the timeline. But then along the way, so God had begun to do a work in other people's hearts that were alongside of us to come help us. And just if you ever hear the story more in depth of just God's provision and how he provided everything that we needed and every person that we needed, and we didn't even know that we needed all the people that God sent at the time. As a naive church planner, I had no clue really everything that it entailed, and I still have no clue all that it entails. I have a better clue, but I'm still learning. But God had provided and been so gracious in sending everyone that we needed to have a good foundation of a church. Some really great friends that we still have to this day. God assembled a core team, and the thing is, like in most church plants, I believe the statistic is 75% of church plants, someone will leave from their core team within the first 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, we're almost at 10 months, and we haven't lost anyone from our core team, and our core team has actually grown.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really just a
We've added.
testament of God really orchestrating everything and God putting all the pieces together. And so, sorry, I got off on a little tangent there.
Oh,
But so talked to my lead pastor. Ended up going. The timeline was escalating a little bit quicker than we had thought it would. And so
by a lot quicker, you mean like
by a lot quicker, I mean
like 4 months
by
from November, December, January, February, March.
March was our first interest meeting. So yeah, we thought
4 months, 2 years.
Yeah.
God said, actually, 4 months. 4 months sounds right. And then we planted. We launched
happens.
on June 7th. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
life happens, and there are a lot of intricacies.
So 7 months,
and God obviously was working on everything, and I have no regrets about the speed of how fast we launched.
No.
I think that he orchestrated those steps to kind of what we're talking about next, the rewarding aspect of it. But yeah, we had our first interest meeting in March. We had 12 people, and I believe 6 of them were family. And so it wasn't I was naive still. I was like, we're still great. Like, we still got plenty of people. And then May came, we had our first worship night, and we started to gain a little bit of momentum there.
There were like 40.
We had about 40, 50 people there. And then by our launch, we had a lot of local support. And so we launched. We had 140 people, which was great, but it was a launching service. And so it's just a lot of people, local support, stuff like that, not people that were going to stay. And then we kind of figured out our real number about a month later, because we had a baptism a month later, and we had 59 people, and the person that was getting baptized, the person that was being baptized brought 20 people themselves.
Yeah.
And so the reality is we had 39 people there, and that was kind of like a reality, like a wake up call, like we're we're not. I
You're
thought
not
it
as
would
big as
be. Yeah.
as you think we are.
And so, and it's been, I mean, just God's graciousness has been incredible since then. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the story of the plant.
Hmm.
And God, some of the aspects of plant. Let me ask, do you want to say anything first? I
Mm-mm.
feel like I don't want to dominate it.
No, it's fine. I don't have anything to add to that. I really don't.
Okay. So, some of the aspects of like why we wanted to plant a church and why we felt called to plant a church in a specific area was we want to plant a church that was both modern, but it had biblical convictions. And we didn't feel like
Mm-hmm.
we felt like there was a place there where there were churches that around that held biblical convictions, but they weren't really trying to reach people in the present time. They were trying to reach people in 1950. And then there were people who were trying to reach people in 2023, but their biblical convictions weren't.
They would compromise.
They were
They were
compromising
compromising.
on scripture.
Yeah.
And so we felt the call that there is a spot here in Baltimore in the Baltimore area in Harford County
Mm-hmm.
for a church that is both modern, that's trying to relate to people in the present, but also has strong biblical convictions and follows God's word.
Yeah.
And so,
And that's another
yeah.
reason why I feel like you feel very strongly about expositional preaching, because a lot of churches preach topically, and there's definitely a time and a place for topical preaching. But he feels very passionate about going verse by verse through the Bible, because a lot of attractional churches or churches that are just pulling people in, the people go, they have a good time, they're consumers, they hear a really encouraging message or a like almost like a motivational message, but then they leave feeling like nothing in their life is necessarily different. And we want people to feel like they come as they are with all the baggage, all of the sin, all of the struggles that they carry. But then when you leave, you have something practical that will grow you closer to Christ rather than just allow you to live a life of comfortability. So expositional preaching is huge for you too with this process.
No, it's 100%. And so, yeah, that's kind of the story of how we started. Next question, and this is the one that we may get into a little bit of the weeds, so I gotta sit up for this one.
Gotta get more comfortable.
What has been the biggest challenges you guys have faced but have worked through? Second part, but have
worked through. Wow.
So I
Okay.
guess there's a lot of outstanding challenges that we'll leave out. But the ones
Fair.
we've worked through, I guess the first one, if we want to start with your dad,
Yeah.
do you wanna share on that?
Yeah, back in September of 2021, just a few months actually after we got married, my dad is a runner. He really likes to run. You wouldn't look at him and think that he enjoyed running, but he would run a
What's that supposed to
5K.
mean?
Like, he's tall, he's a bigger guy. Like, you would not look at him and be like, oh, he's a runner. No, but like, he ran 3 miles every day religiously when he would get home from work. And I mean, that takes a lot, first of all. But he was out on one of those runs, and we're still actually not really sure what happened. I mean, the doctors ruled out brain aneurysm, they ruled out stroke, they ruled out heart attack. But he just collapsed, and he hit his head really, really hard, and he had to have emergency brain surgery and fell into a coma for about 4 months. And he came out of his coma, but even to this day, so I guess we're like a little over 2.5 years removed from that, and he is still not necessarily, like, he's with traumatic brain injuries, there's coma, and then once you emerge from a coma, you're in a vegetative state, and then you're in a minimally conscious state. And I would say he's like between minimally conscious and conscious. Like, he cannot do anything on his own. My mom is his full-time caretaker. But recently he's been trying to speak and use his voice, but it's pretty inconsistent still. And so that was really difficult to navigate. I mean, we had been married for 3 months. I was 20 years old. And so kind of like, even though he's still here, it's kind of like we lost my dad. And because of his story with his dad, my dad kind of was trying to step in as a father figure for him, and they had just actually started getting close, literally, like, what, the month? Probably, like, the month
Yeah.
that he fell,
Yeah,
they kind of mended.
me and him are both pretty like type A,
They're stubborn.
stubborn
They're really
men.
stubborn.
And so when you have a type A stubborn man coming in, taking your daughter,
Yeah.
and you're also type A stubborn,
They butted heads a
sometimes
lot.
you butt heads.
Yeah.
And so we butt heads. We always love each other, but
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, about a month before the accident, me and him really started to click.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big deal to me because of, my past with my dad leaving. It was he was my father figure,
Mm-hmm.
and he was going to be our now daughter's grandfather figure,
Mm-hmm.
because now, as it stands right now, unless God can do a miracle,
Absolutely.
I still believe that, but right now she lacks that true grandfather figure in both of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big challenge. And we both process things very differently. And so do you want to talk about some of those challenges as far as like our processing goes?
What do you mean, like, processing
Like,
it?
how do I process emotions?
Oh, you shut down.
Yeah, I'm a
Like,
suppressor.
he doesn't like to talk about it. Whereas I guess I know what you mean now. I'm the exact opposite. Like, I have to talk about it right now, or else, like, my brain, I don't know if it's a female thing or if it's just a me thing, but, like, my brain will not turn off. I cannot function unless everything is resolved. Like, if there's, like, one little thing, like, we'll resolve an issue, but he said one little thing that I'm a little, like, unsure of, it'll, like, eat me alive in my brain. Like, I will not be able to sleep. So I needed somebody to talk to and process all of this, like, verbally, whereas he needed space
Yeah.
to, like, process it on your own.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things you don't really think about when you're going to marriage, is different types of emotional processing that people have. And just that, growing up with the struggles I had with my dad, one of the coping mechanisms I developed was suppressing emotions,
Mm-hmm.
or compartmentalizing. That way I could continue to live and not constantly be thinking about the hurt or the loss.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned very early on in my life to compartmentalize, to suppress things. And that actually caught up to me many times, a couple different times in my life that caught up to me. But in the beginning of our marriage, and even still now, we still struggle with it. But now we at least recognize it, and we're able to work through it a little bit
Yeah.
faster. But one of the things was she would want to talk about things. I would want to shut down and suppress things. And so I wasn't being what she needed, and I wasn't asking her questions and allowing her to process things, because I was processing things the way I always did, which was
Mm-hmm.
suppressing and compartmentalizing them. And so neither of us were in healthy spots.
I was
And
definitely in
so,
a worse mental spot than you were, though, at that time. Like, we kind of end up flipping that role later, and
yeah.
like a
Well,
year later.
but that explains the
But
processing,
yeah,
because you were in a worse spot at that time because you were emotionally processing in the moment.
yeah,
Where I got into a worse spot later in our marriage because I was compartmentalizing everything and suppressing it until later when it blew up.
right.
And so, yeah, with that, I mean, that was a huge challenge. Still is a huge challenge
Mm-hmm.
today with her dad. So that was one challenge we faced. Another challenge that we'll talk about because we just segued it. About I guess a year into our marriage, I got into this really anxious, I'd say, few weeks in my life, and it was in October. And anxiety had just grabbed a foothold in my life, and it wouldn't let me go. Whether that be spiritual warfare, or maybe internal. I had a lot of pressure because we were about to have our daughter, and I never
Mm-hmm.
had a dad growing up. So my fear was, am I going to be a good dad? I don't want to be like the dad that I had. I want to be a good dad, and so there's a lot of fear, anxiety about that. There was, yeah, just a dangerous and terrible cycle of anxiety, where for 3 weeks, I mean, I had really bad insomnia.
You
Um,
lost a lot of weight.
I lost, yeah, that was
Not like the
probably,
good weight though. Like you weren't eating, you
yeah.
weren't sleeping. You
I
lost weight.
Yeah, I remember one time I weighed 158. And then I remember about 2 weeks in, I went to the bathroom one day, and I stepped on the scale and I weighed 144 pounds. And I lost 14 pounds in 2
Mhm.
weeks. Um, and I just broke down. Like, I was crying all the time. And I think that also feeds into my emotional processing.
Mhm.
I'm suppressing everything. I'm compartmentalizing. I'm
Even
moving
then,
forward because I don't
in
want
the
to.
midst
I
of
don't want to
that, yeah.
address it, and then it builds up until you can't suppress it anymore, and it all comes out.
Mhm.
And during those 2 weeks, I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better wife. Just the support that she gave. She didn't make me feel like I was crazy. She didn't make me feel like I was, like there was something wrong with me. Uh, just everything that I expected, because that's what I thought of myself. Oh, there's something wrong with me. I'm going crazy. Who could love me like this? Someone that's so anxious, that's literally can't even think. And she just loved me through it. And honestly, without if it wasn't her, like I don't know where I would be today. Um, and I'm not getting
Oh
emotional.
my gosh, she's
I'm
getting
not getting emotional.
emotional.
And
Aw.
then yeah, I don't know where I would be today without that. Those 3 weeks, that was literally the basement of my life, and you were there, and I don't even know how I got through the 3 weeks without you. Like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have gotten through those. And obviously, God was with me, and He was able to teach me a lot of lessons that I would need. I see now that He was using that to prepare me for the church plant
Yeah.
and for trusting Him, because He taught me a lot of things. He Through that anxiety, a lot of my control issues and trust issues had to go.
Mhm.
And so he worked and refined those in my life, which I can see is part of how he used it.
Mhm.
But yeah, those.
I mean, the timing all makes sense too. Um, I didn't grow up with much of a like spiritual um aspect to my life. Like it was very like what you can see in the physical right now. Spiritual warfare wasn't something that I had been really used to talking about or hearing about, but his mom is very much in tune with like sensing spiritual battles going on around, which I am wholeheartedly a believer in. But if you look at the timing of when that happened, like he was like in that basement, like he says, of his life. You were there in November.
It was
No, you were.
October.
That was October. Yeah. So Graceland was born November
November 11th.
11th.
Yeah.
So I was like a month into like about to give birth, and he had been feeling this call to plant a church, but he also doesn't like change. You don't like change a
Hmm.
lot. Like he likes where he lives. He likes things a certain way. Like you're way better now, I think, because of
Hmm.
this. But you didn't like change, and the idea of leaving your current job, which was really comfortable and which was an amazing experience for
And I was good
you.
at it. Like
And
I
you were real,
enjoyed
yeah,
doing
like
it,
he was
but
really good at it too. And so the idea of having to leave that and then on top of that becoming a dad, like there was just so much change that was about to take place in that month. And so like the spiritual warfare, I feel like, I mean, if you look at the things that God is doing in our church right now, I think we talk about that later, but it's wild. Like it is unbelievable how far God has brought C3 in the less than a year that it's been in existence. And so it makes perfect sense to me, like the spiritual warfare aspect of things. Like, of course, Satan is going to be attacking super, super hard when he's deciding to follow God's call in his
mm,
life. And when you're deciding to take steps of faith, which isn't something that you'd really had to do before.
mm,
So the timing of it makes
yeah.
perfect sense.
Whenever God is trying to do something big in your life, there's typically going to be warfare around it.
Oh, yeah.
whenever you're going to do anything spiritual, there's also another side of that spiritual warfare that doesn't want you to do what you're about to do.
Mm-hmm.
And even like this podcast tonight, like we were not in a good spot before tonight.
No.
Like we got into an argument over the dumbest thing before this podcast.
Let's see.
4
hours
ago?
ago?
Yeah, we got into the dumbest argument.
Yeah.
And, both of us are type A as well. And, pride is a hard thing. And I would not back down. I could have easily ended it.
So could I.
Yeah.
I could have too.
I could have
It
easily
wouldn't have been that hard.
But just there's so much, whenever God is really calling you and is about to use you, you can typically expect the spiritual warfare to be ramped up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get into that later when we talk about advice to a young family.
Mm-hmm.
But God the devil would love nothing more than to put a wrench in your relationship.
I mean, he can't get to your soul if you're saved, if you're redeemed through Christ. He can't get you that way. You cannot lose. We don't believe you can lose your salvation, which means if you're saved, you're saved. He can't take you to hell with him, and that makes him angry because that's his sole purpose, is to take as many down to hell with him as possible. And so if he can't get your soul, he's going to go after everything in your life that makes you want to serve Jesus. And so in that case, he went after the one thing that you had control of in your life, which was your own mind, and he attacked that to try to get you to think that you're crazy, because if you can think that you're crazy, why would you want to start a church plant? And if you didn't start this church plant, like, people have been saved, people have been baptized, like, God is moving in incredible ways with our church. And so spiritual warfare definitely has come after our marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, daily.
But
it's daily.
Yeah, that was a big challenge. I'll talk about one challenge as far as the church plant goes for me personally, and then if you want to think about one, if you have one as well. But one challenge as far as the church planting side goes, for us, has been working on time management, because if you're a church planner, you may raise support and be able to go full-time from day one. That's great. That wasn't our story. Still not our story.
It still isn't our story.
But I work part-time now. I'm
Yeah.
part-time at the church, part-time at another job. But I was full-time at another job and then full-time at the church as well. And one of the things that our culture, and I believed, was just in this grind mentality of making things happen on your own. Like, winners make things happen and losers let things happen. And just like those kind of cliches. And the thing is, like, I brought that wrongfully. I brought that into our church plant, in that there is, if you go online, you can look up 7 best ways to reach your community, 6 best ways to start a small group, 4 ways you can grow your church plant. And this is the process, and this is the secret to doing it. And it's almost like we process God right out of our churches. And in the beginning of our church plant, I don't think we as a team, I think our team did a great job. I think I sometimes would do that and process God out of things. And I would try to do things on my own power. And we were having like 5 dinners a week with different people from our church.
Sunday, small group. Monday, we would have people over. Tuesday, we had people over. Wednesday was church. Thursday, we would have people over. And Friday, we would have people over. Saturdays were like our only days to relax.
Yeah.
And I feel like even most Saturdays, something came up.
That was just so...
Every day of the week.
I was so focused on this mentality of having to build the church. And I was building the church not based off of... I wasn't building it off of what God was calling me to do. I was building it off of what I had seen and processes that I have seen work. And, if I just do this process to the best of my ability as hard as I can, then it'll work. And I was leaving God out of it.
I feel like it
And
came from a genuine heart,
yeah,
as in, like, we've both experienced churches before in both of our past, like before we even met, where things weren't done relationally as well as they could have been, and so we like made that a pillar for C3. We were like, we are not gonna let people feel like we don't want them here, or like we don't care about each and every one of them individually, because that's what Jesus would have done. And so we still do
yeah,
open up our home, and we want as many people to come through those doors and to feel comfortable like sitting with us and eating with us and fellowshipping with us, because relationships are huge. So it came out of like a good
it was a
heart,
good heart, but it was
but it got twisted very
yes,
quickly, which led to some burnout really quickly as well.
yeah, it was just bad. It was poor time management. And still to this day, like
Yeah.
we still have people over our house, but it's just we do we have people over our house at a much better. Our time management's
Oh
much
yeah.
better, and it's when God is putting someone on my heart to have
Yeah.
people over. It's no longer a process of having people over.
Mhm.
It's God's putting someone on my heart to have them over. And that was a big change.
Mhm.
And a big change in our church was just the overall vision. I felt like there was constant pressure to cast a new vision. Like, okay, our first vision was let's get to 50 people. Okay, we got to 50 people. Now what's our next vision? Okay, let's get to 100 people. Okay, we got to 100 people. Now what? Let's get 10 baptisms. Okay, we got to 10 baptisms. Now what?
Let's get a live stream camera.
Let's get a live stream
Like
camera.
this really nice.
Let's
Yeah.
get new lights. Let's get to 150 people. It's always the vision was there was so much pressure on me to come up with and it was probably pressure I was putting more on myself than even the people around me, because I was afraid of failure, and afraid of failing, that I was pushing too hard
Mhm.
in a way that it wasn't it was like it wasn't what God was calling me to do. It was what
Mhm.
I was doing in my own power.
Mhm.
And
And they
since
were all good things though.
yeah,
And it's like that's one thing that we've learned together, I feel like, is that you can do like great things, but if they're not God things, then they don't really matter. Like they're good
you
things.
can do good things in the flesh.
Yeah, you can do good
You can do good things in the flesh.
Yeah.
You can have a religious flesh, right? You can have a religious flesh.
Yeah.
You can read your Bible.
philanthropic.
You can read your Bible in the flesh if it's a checklist and you're doing it to be self-righteous.
Mhm.
And so it was just that. And even like with we were talking about the vision, like our vision now as a church is this: it's to be in the center of God's will.
Mhm.
That's our vision. Like we don't have a vision like, hey, we're gonna plant 17 churches. Oh, that's my mom calling me. We're not like let me mute that real quick. We don't have a vision anymore that's like, hey, we're gonna reach 1,000 people in 10 years, or we're gonna plant 5 churches in 20 years.
If that's God's vision.
If that's how God
Great.
directs us, we will.
Yeah.
But our vision is to be in the center of God's will, and so
Mhm.
we're gonna do whatever God reveals for us to do in that moment.
Mhm.
And so that was a huge challenge for me to overcome, was letting that pride go, letting that fear of failure go, and letting God really build and work in his church, because that's what he does.
Mhm.
That's what he does.
He's going to do it with or without.
Yeah.
With or without us, with or without you, but
Do you want to go to the next question?
yeah, sure.
Okay. Next question: what has been the most rewarding thing about planning the church?
For me, it's very different than his. I am a middle school English teacher, and every time I tell people that, their first response is, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." Like I actually love it. Like I teach 7th and 8th graders, and it is so much fun for me every week to watch my students that I teach like come to church and enjoy church, and even just that age group in general. Like I'm in charge of the kids, and I kind of took over that when we started, if I'm being honest, kicking and screaming. I didn't really want to do the kids because I'm in the middle school age. I didn't really want to deal with the little ones, but since we've taken over this, like we have 2 little ones that are getting baptized for our Easter service coming up soon, and I have 3 students that have been coming to our church that had previously been saved, but they didn't have a church home, and so they needed some place to get baptized, and so they're getting baptized as well this next Wednesday. And so the most rewarding thing for me has been seeing people that I care about genuinely love coming to church, and and also someone who was really, really close to me got saved recently, And only God can take credit for that, honestly. Like, her story, she might be a guest on this
Do you want
podcast
to tell a
eventually.
story?
I mean, sure. She was my boss for about a year and a half.
Wow.
I nannied or babysat for her daughter, and I adore that little girl, and I adored that family. And her family is very, very Muslim, and I knew, like, when I got that job, I was like, God's got me here for a reason, because I got denied from a job that I definitely was qualified for. I should have gotten
From
that
where?
from Chick-fil-A.
Oh, okay.
I should have gotten
I
that
didn't know.
job.
I was
Like,
just asking.
whatever. My brother owns a Chick-fil-A. I've worked at 3 different ones, and, like, I'm not trying to be overconfident, but, like, I am good at that job.
No, you were good.
Like,
You had the resume.
I
And
had
you had
the
an
resume,
owner.
and they said they were hiring, and I never got a call back. And then a week later, I saw the "We're hiring" sign again in the drive-thru, and I was
hiring,
like,
just not you.
no, okay, that's it. So when I didn't get that job, and then I got this job, and I, like, fell in love with their family, with her. Like, she was she was a great boss. Like, she treated me really well. Like, I went on vacation with them. Like, we grew really, really close. And I knew, I was like, okay, God has me here for a reason, clearly, because there's no reason I shouldn't have gotten this job, and there's a reason I got this job. So
Well, tell about what happened when you talked about Jesus.
there was a time where I was telling her kids about Jesus. We were just having, like, a very general conversation, and I guess they went back and told her, and she didn't love that at first. I feel like, okay, maybe I was being, like, forceful with it. I really wasn't trying to
You're being a
be.
little Jehovah's Witness over there.
I know. I guess I was. But she, like, kind of told me, "Hey, like, we love you, but we would really appreciate it if you wouldn't, like, kind of force, like, your beliefs about God and your beliefs about Jesus on our family." And I was like, my bad. I'm so sorry, my bad. But I still wanted to be involved, and so I was like, I don't want to lose my job. Like, I love these people, so I will. That's fine. I'll stop talking about it as much. And they came out to. She and her husband came out to support us when we planted the church on June 7th, and then, like, we've gone in and out of communication, like, for months at a time. Like, we would talk here and there, and then she came, and when she left a few weeks ago, she looked at me and she was like, "Hey, I'll see you next week." And I was like, "Next week? So you're coming back. Okay." And then she was there the next week, and then the next week, and then she ended up, like, she's going through a really difficult time in her life, and she was feeling this call, like, this pull towards Jesus, and I guess you were able to just kind of talk with her about that, but she, like, made the decision on her own. She was like, "Yeah, I want to follow Jesus." And so for me, like,
Yeah.
hands down, between that and, like, seeing my students like coming to church, those are the most rewarding things by far. And, like, it makes all of the struggle worth it to know that hell lost, even if it was one soul, hell lost a soul. And every struggle, everything that it's taken in the past 10 months to get C3 where it is 100% worth it if that was the only reason that we ever went through it.
No, that was huge to see someone make such a drastic 360.
Yeah.
That was just...
It's encouraging.
Like,
it's really encouraging.
You would never have guessed that would happen. And, like, I'll even tell myself, like, we were 2 weeks before they came to service the second time, which would have been in February or so. We were going to have dinner there, and I really wasn't feeling well. I just wasn't feeling it. And Bekah told me, she's like, this is a spiritual opportunity, and this is where you got to let your wife speak into your lives. And so, wives speaking into lives. There you go. But she was saying, this is a spiritual opportunity to reach these people and to share with them God's grace and his love. And me in the flesh in that moment, I saw they didn't, like, there was nothing that...
They hadn't been to our church since...
They hadn't been to our church
since the
in
grand
6
opening.
months.
Yeah.
The last time that they had, like, the last time Jesus was even brought up in her house, Bekah was told not to speak about him again. I was like, she's not going to come, like, she's not going to be a follower of Jesus.
But I was like, I don't even care. Like, we
and
still need to go.
and Bekah saw the spiritual aspect, and it just shows how finite and how little and how fleshly I was in that moment, that I was, and how poor my heart was. I was like, oh no, but I end up going because you helped me with my mindset of going, and then from there, I say helped or forced, either one. I ended up going to that dinner, and then from there, she ended up coming to church for, the next 3 weeks, and then becoming a follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so it's just crazy. But yeah, some of the most rewarding thing I would say for me, it's the relationships are big. For me, growing a relationship with all of the people in our core team and all the people in our church, it's crazy to think about, 9.5 months ago, not knowing some of these people.
Yeah.
It's crazy to really think when you look at some of the people in our congregation that, like, we had no clue.
We would have never met.
Other. We had never met.
Yeah. And now they're like big parts of our lives.
Yeah.
That is weird. Then, I was just thinking about that on Wednesday.
Yeah, so the relationships, but then also another rewarding thing is, I would say, seeing God move in ways that I really hadn't seen before, as far as seeing how he orchestrates everything for a reason. Just the stories that I hear of people, like there was one family that hadn't been to a church in 10 years because they were church hurt, and then they just decided randomly to give a Wednesday night church a try, and now they've been coming for a month and a half. They want to host a small group. Like stories like that. There's another story of a guy named Greg who had type 1 diabetes, didn't even know it until his mid-50s, which was incredible, almost died, was in the hospital. A pastor came to talk to him from a church called Christ Community Church, and so it had 3 C's in it. And then a year passes by, and he sees our ad on Facebook, and he sees the 3 C's, and he says, well, I guess I'll give it a try, since that's 3 C's in it.
Thinking it was the same church?
And he comes to... No, he didn't think it was the same church. It was just like, I guess, a little superstition on his end.
Oh, okay.
He was like, 3 C's, I'll give it a try. And so then he ends up coming to our church, and he wasn't a believer at the time at all. Was not a believer. Kept coming back for a month. Still not a believer. We were $1,000 short of our live stream goal for a video camera. And he gives $1,000. And he's not even a believer. Just still does it. Then 2 more months go by, and then God keeps working on his heart, and he ends up trusting Jesus as his Lord and Savior, and is now going to get baptized this Wednesday on Easter Wednesday. You heard it here first. Easter Wednesday. Easter Wednesday is the new Easter Sunday. So we celebrate the resurrection every Wednesday. That's what we say. And so it's just those kind of things, and seeing how God orchestrates everything, like it really has been so rewarding to see, if I just continue to do what I feel God's calling me to do, if I continue to stay connected to him, do my personal devotions, stay connected to the vine. If I do that, then God will bring who he intends to bring.
Yeah.
I think I was so focused on bringing everyone on my own effort that it's been the most rewarding to see God's going to call and bring to C3 who he intends to. My job is just to shepherd the people that he brings in. And it's been so rewarding to see that, and God's been so gracious. Just incredible as far as just from how many people we have seen to, we're about to have our 20th baptism now.
Yeah.
Which has been incredible. And then the finances as well. For me to be able to go part-time 9 months in is pretty incredible. And so, yeah, it's been awesome. A couple more questions. We can do rapid fire on these, because I think we've been a little bit long. Sure. How do you keep a healthy relationship with Jesus while also being so busy with ministry?
Well, we kind of already talked about being busy a lot. This is a definite area of growth in my life that I'm still navigating, because like I said, I mean, I have a lot of full-time jobs. Like being a pastor's wife is a full-time job. Being a mom is a full-time job. Being a wife is a full-time job. Being a teacher is like 3 full-time jobs.
Kids director,
Yeah, that too.
model.
Doing the okay, no, not that. But being a kids director, like all these things are so time consuming, and so it's definitely difficult um to keep up with personal devotions. But I mean, one area I guess that I've never really struggled in is the music department. Like on the way to school, I like to listen to worship music in the morning, and then on the way home from work, I listen to worship music. And not that that's in any way, shape, or form a good replacement for devotions, because those are absolutely necessary. But even on days where I make up the excuse that I don't have time, I still am trying to fill my mind and my soul with spiritual things. But I mean, we're doing a discipleship book right now called Rooted that has been really beneficial, I think, for our team. And for me, even though I'm behind on it per my typical procrastination self, I am behind. But when I do it, it's really, really helpful.
Yeah.
So I'm still really, really struggling in this area, though. So y'all can pray for me as I navigate that. You could speak into
I
it
think there's
better.
different seasons. We all go through different seasons of our life. And I think for me specifically, it's easy to say, well, I'm preparing a sermon. And so, that counts as my daily devotion. And I'm studying this passage out. And there's just this huge difference between studying a passage in order to preach and teach it versus studying a passage to hear what God's calling you into in that moment. And I think for me, just realizing more than he wants me to be a church planner, more than he wants me to be a good pastor, even more than he wants me to be a good father or a good husband, he wants me to be a good disciple of his. And so I know that if I'm following him the way he's called me to, then I will be a good father. I will be a good pastor. I will be a good, soccer coach. I'll be all of those things if I put that priority in place. And so, some things that I've used in the past that have helped have been, there are a couple prayer apps that you can use to give you reminders of prayer. I like to listen to audiobooks. And so doing audio devotionals on the way there, on the way to work, or on the way back from work has been big. I'm trying to think. Obviously, the SOAP acronym for journaling,
SOAP.
scripture, observation, application, prayer. That's a good go-to. But I think really it's just finding life changes. Life is constantly evolving. And sometimes, like when you have a child that's waking you up throughout the night, 6 a.m. devotions isn't going to be the easiest thing. And I don't even know if you're going to be in the right headspace to do 6 a.m. devotions.
That's when you need it the most.
And so I would say like, don't beat yourself up if you're not as structured as like, it has to be 6 a.m. every day.
Yeah.
Just allow God to lead you moment by moment and be intentional about making time for him. In the morning, throughout your day. God's not someone that's like you just want to talk to for 5 minutes in the beginning and then not talk to the rest of the day. He's someone that you should be talking to all throughout the day. And so really just finding places within your life rhythm of being intentional about getting in God's word, being in prayer and listening to worship. But last question. What advice would you give to a young couple or any couple starting a family?
Why are you looking at me like that?
Why don't you start?
I don't know. There's so much advice. Why don't you explain? Well, I'll say it and then you can give more detail. Probably the best advice that we were given that we still struggle to follow, but it is a very good principle if you follow it, is the 100 principle of like, we always hear that, oh, marriage it's like 50-50. Like you got to give 50 and then they give 50 and then it's 100. And sometimes if he's giving 40, then that means I have to give 60 so that it always equals 100. The advice we were given was that it's always he gives 100 and I give 100. It's 100 100, not 50-50, which I think eliminates a lot of excuses. Like, oh, well, today is just not like a good day. Like, I don't really feel it today, so I'm only going to give like 20 or 30%, and it's his job to like pick up the slack for me. While there is give and take, and there are days where I'm not going to be giving 100% in my flesh. It's like we were talking about earlier, just like 4 or 5 hours ago when we were in an argument over something so dumb. Like, had I been giving 100% of myself to the marriage, it would have
talk about the argument?
Been over like that. Like, what about it?
Just a general thing. I'll tell the narrative. I get home from.
No.
I'll tell the general narrative.
Uh-oh.
I get home from work, and it was mentally just a pretty long day. I think no one's gonna be home, and so I'm like, I'm gonna get home. I'm gonna take a nap, and I'm gonna relax before Becca gets home with the baby. And because she had been at her mom's house cleaning out some things. And she had my truck at the time. I had her car, so I get home. And I pull up and I get home, and my truck's in the driveway. But not just that didn't bother me as much. It was that there was a bunch of stuff in the bed of my truck.
My stuff.
Like a bunch of just...
Like my childhood stuff.
Like I couldn't
books,
tell if it was
animals,
garbage or it was stuff that
some
was
of it
good.
was.
Like there was a bunch of stuff. And I wanted to get home and take a nap. And then I was like, okay, well now I got all this stuff in the bed of my truck. Mm-hmm. They're home. And so, then with me, I can't rest unless I get things done. So like I had to have everything done. And so then I start working on things. But then she can tell that I'm upset, that I'm frustrated. I mean, it's pretty obvious that I'm frustrated. And so then she's...
Well, from my perspective, I got out of the car and like we happened to get home at the same time, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool."
You
like
thought
that
it was
never,
a great day.
Like I thought it was a great day. Like that never happens.
My perspective was, this is the best day ever.
Like,
my perspective was, why are you home? And why is there crap in the back of my truck?
Like I got out of my car and I opened my arms to him, and I was like,
"This is
oh
real
my
life.
gosh! Like we got home at the same time.
This is real marriage right here."
Like I was like, I just pulled in too, and he just like looked at me.
I was like,
did not give me a hug, kept walking, and was like, what is all this crap? Like, those were his words. Like, what is all this crap? After I'm like, hey, we got home at the same time. Like, how cool is... What is all that crap? And I was like, oh.
And so, like, then it just begins into, like I said, I suppress things.
He's mad,
so I don't want to talk. I don't talk. I just get stuff done.
Now
like,
I'm hurt.
I'm an angry cleaner, too. Like, if I'm angry, I'll just clean the house.
Which isn't always a bad thing.
Maybe that's why you get me angry.
That is not
on purpose.
No.
But if I get angry sometimes, like I will clean the entire house. Like I will clean the house. And so, like I got home when
he started touching all my it's my stuff, and he starts taking it out of the truck, and I'm trying to get him to stop and be like, "Can I explain what all this is and like where it goes? Like this is mine. Like this goes to the basement. This goes to Graceland's room. This goes to the trash." And he's just like trying to like push me out of the way and like do it all himself. And then from his perspective, I'm trying to like stop him, and I'm trying to lead, and I'm trying to like assert my dominance, whereas I'm literally just getting seriously hurt over this little thing. Whereas if I had just been like, okay, let's see, I know my husband, he has to get things done. Like he's tired. He just came home it's a Friday, so he's had a long week. He wants to go inside and relax, and he's trying to help me because he doesn't want me carrying all these heavy boxes. So instead of me looking at it from his perspective and being like, hey, okay, yeah, you just take it in and then I'll figure out what to do with it. I'm so sorry that this is an additional stressor for you. I know you wanted to come home and relax. Instead of that, I'm now like all emotional, and now I'm crying because I thought it was so cool that we got home at the same time and he didn't. And I'm overreacting, and then he's overreacting because I'm crying. It's just...
Yeah. Well, back to where we're talking about 100.
100.
That would have been your 100, right?
If I had
you would have done that, then it would have resolved.
Then it would have made him feel fine.
Yeah, but on my end, like that was if she would have given 100. If I would have given 100, I would have got home. Okay, I could have been a little frustrated, but I could have allowed God to work through me in that moment to, get out of the car, hey, babe, it's awesome. I'm glad that you're home. I'll give you a hug. I will say hi to Graceland, and I'll say, hey, I really would like to get this all out of the bed of my truck before I would like to relax. If I would have done that, that would have been my 100, and it would have been that issue would have been evaded.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue was overall that neither of us in that moment were giving 100. And so that's why we got the argument turned into something much bigger, was because neither of us gave 100, when the reality is if even one of us gave 100, it would have been okay.
And I imagine how cool it would have been if both of us gave 100.
And if both of us,
it wouldn't even be a conversation.
Oh, yeah. If both of us,
it would have been fine. It would have been great.
Come on,
there would have been no conversation to be had.
So
that's a good piece of advice. The 100-100 principle. If you're both constantly giving 100%. Yeah.
I would say that's good. I would say another one would be to have some mentors in your life that you can go to and talk about things and talk through things. Because sometimes, you're just going to be thinking of something the wrong way because either you're like we are young or immature or naive in an area. It's good to have a soundboard to see, am I thinking rationally about this? Is this actually realistic? Another thing that's helped us would be expectations. Set up expectations because a lot of arguments come from expectations that don't get met. And
have realistic expectations too, not like he's always going to give 100%, so I never have to give any. Like realistic expectations for sure.
But I forgot to give this advice. This is number one advice. If you are looking to start a family, get married.
Yeah, get married first.
Get married. That is the first piece of advice. Okay, there are times where cohabitating is becoming more just a reality in our culture.
Yeah.
And the issue with that is you are expecting each other to be fully committed without the commitment actually there.
Yeah.
And so, and some of the things we talked about, like we've talked about with young couples who may be thinking about getting together, or living together before getting married, is that, like imagine you have a girlfriend and boyfriend and they move in together and they're not married. She's expecting him to be a husband, but she is giving him, like in one instance, she was folding his laundry and obviously they were intimate. If you live together and you tell me you're not intimate, I don't believe you. Just know that right now. Just know that right now. I will not believe you. And so they were obviously intimate. And they, she folded his laundry, did stuff like that. And so he was getting all the benefits of being married, but without the commitment of actually being married. And so the reality is that's the first piece of advice I have to say. You need to do it in God's order, because with God's order also comes God's blessing.
Yeah.
And so, and if you are a Christian, you already know that what you're doing is wrong. And so you're going to have to live without guilt and shame, and that's going to feed its way in to your marriage, because like what we talk about, the devil wants nothing more than to put a wrench in marriages and relationships, because he knows that dysfunction will breed dysfunction. And so if you're dysfunctional and your kid grows up in a dysfunctional household, unless God gets a hold of them and his grace and mercy transforms them, it's going to breed dysfunction. It's also going to breed dysfunction in your ministry. If your relationship is dysfunctional at home, your ministry relationships will be dysfunctional as well. And so Satan knows that dysfunction breeds dysfunction, and so he's going to try to do that within your marriage. And so first piece of advice, get married. Second piece,
then the 100-100.
100-100.
Once you're married.
Third piece, get some mentors that you trust, soundboards. And then fourth piece, set some expectations so that each other are aware of what you're actually expecting.
Yeah, verbalize those expectations too. Don't have those expectations in your head, and then when your spouse doesn't meet those expectations, then you get mad at them. You've never even told. You've never communicated it. Yeah. You have to say, hey, this is what I like, in a loving way, but you have to say, like, hey, this is kind of what I'm expecting. Is this reasonable to you? Like, is this something that like can actually be a thing in our marriage, because different marriages function differently. Like something that might work for us may not work for a different marriage, and then vice versa. So you have to communicate that with your partner. You can't just use somebody else as a soundboard who gives really good advice and wisdom, um, without then communicating that with your spouse, because you can get all the good wisdom in the world, but then if you're not communicating that with your partner, with your spouse, that might not work for your relationship. So you have to let the Holy Spirit lead in that as well.
Yeah, I think it's good. But yeah, thanks for joining us in this a little bit longer podcast for sure. But thanks Josh Stone Productions for hosting us. And so we
Yeah.
will catch you guys next month.